On, on this week's program, just how good will the return of Pennywise be the second time around? Get out your Lancers for another round of Gears of War, and fantasy football is back again. All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse. And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports, Off the Glass Basketball, and of course Pop Culture Cosmos. Man, that's a lot to say right here for you. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. It is our Marcus Phoenix of Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to listen to everything. Oh, you got to check out everything that he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com, Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and so much more, including his book, Congratulations, You Suck. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. I've got two words for you when it comes to Gears of War, my friend. Ah, come on.
I thought that you were going a different direction with that. I thought you were going to say, Josh, ammo.
Exactly. Oh, no. Actually, for me, I always remember, come on, when I get it stuck right there. And I don't hit the button at the right time and it doesn't reload properly.
It's a little more expletive than that, but I get what you're saying.
Yes. But this is going to remain a family show. We're going to try and keep it as clean as possible. But just don't let me play Gears of War with you anytime soon. But it is going to be a great episode we have for you today of the PCC Multiverse. We are talking some Gears of War as Gears of War 5 hit stores this weekend. We're going to talk about some of the early reviews, some of the early thoughts. Plus, again, we're going to discuss into more detail what we're hoping for from the experience known as Gears of War 5. Also, as well, we're going to be talking about another video game that's coming out this weekend, NBA 2K20, which is going to always be a big seller because the NBA 2K line of games has just really done very well over the past few years. But as those microtransactions with NBA 2K series have gone up, also the controversy with it has gone up as well. And it's really gotten to a boiling point when it concerns their latest video that they actually debuted this week in Europe in regards to a big time controversy in regards to possible gambling issues. So we'll talk about that coming up later in the show. We also have we're also continuing our countdown of the top 200 video games of all time with numbers 141 to 150. And Justin Novero, he's stopping by to talk some fantasy football because we also started this week the Inside Sports Fantasy Football Podcast. And I'll tell you what, it's just so exciting to talk to some great people. I've already talked to Jason Dutch from The Voice from the Underground. That's already up. And Justin Novero, he's coming up on this week's program to talk some fantasy football. We actually made it our own separate show that's Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and you'll be able to get that, and you'll be able to listen to episodes straight from there on all your favorite podcast outlets. But first, my friend, it is It Chapter 2. I tell you what, a lot of people are excited because it's the first, I don't want to say gotta see movie, but this is the first high profile movie we've had come to the Cineplexes in quite some time. I guess Hobbs and Shaw, I think, was probably the last one, and that's about a month ago. So I want to hear your thoughts, my friend, as It Chapter 2, it comes out in theaters. Your thoughts on what was your experience like in regards to watching the previous It movie and what you're hoping to see when it comes to It Chapter 2. You're on mute.
Hold on, sorry, my dog's barking.
I thought you were talking.
I was yelling at the dog. So it was one of those movies where that just sounds funny when you say it. It was one of those movies. You get what I'm trying to say. Where you were expecting it to be scary because we went and saw you know, if you were a kid and you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you obviously saw the one with what was the guy's name that played Pennywise in the original It?
Oh, Tim Curry.
Tim Curry,
played it,
yeah.
and it had John Ritter in it, and Harry Anderson. Some great character actors during that period of time. And I've told you before, I've seen it, and actually it'll get played right around this time again. So if anybody missed out on it, I'm sure they're going to be able to get a chance to see it this weekend. But I mean, the practical effects have aged very badly, and it does not look good at all, especially in the ending. But overall, I guess it's a little bit over the top and hammy. But you know what? For a '90s TV movie, which it was at that time, which doesn't happen too often these days on broadcast television, I think is pretty worthwhile, and I enjoyed it at the time. It's just not the type of movie that has aged very well. So that's why I appreciate It Chapter 1 even more.
Yeah, but I mean, like I'm sorry, it's just making me laugh saying that. Whether the movie has the old one, whether it has, you find it corny or whatever, it still had a special place in our hearts growing up, because it was the movie. You know, your friends would show up to school going, "Have you seen this movie? It's terrifying. It's about a clown. It eats kids and stuff like that." And like it was the quintessential horror movie for.
It was actually pushing the guidelines of what broadcast television was doing at that point in time.
Yeah, and it came out on video. It was even in the 90s, like me growing up in 90. When was I in the first grade? 96, I think. That was the movie. All my friends were like, "Hey, my parents have this movie about this killer clown." And so it doesn't matter like if the effects were bad. Of course, the effects in Mortal Kombat are bad, but it was just one of those films or TV series that stood out very high amongst the other things going on at the time. You know, fast forward now, we get this remake, and that book has been repackaged more times than I can count. But you fast forward now, you get the remake of it, and it's a stellar movie. It's amazing. Like it's not just, it's got horror, it's got mystery, it's got comedy in it. It's not the shock value of the.
It's not it.
It's not. Yeah. Well, the shock value of the '80s version has been. I don't want to say removed, but it's been tweaked a little bit to actually form a good story, because we have a history of horror in cinema just being bad, or they try to make it meta or transcending in some way. It doesn't work out. And now you have, who directed it? It was sorry, I'm having a brain fart right now. Who did that? Oh my gosh, did you find it?
Andres Muschietti. Andres Muschietti.
Yes.
Andres Muschietti.
Yeah, so it was very well put together. It's very well written. It had something for everybody, but it offered more than just cheap scares, and I think that's what makes it stand out so much. And now we have It Chapter 2 coming out, and it elaborates on the first one more. It carries the story on, and because in the book jumps around between when the kids are kids and then when they're adults. Like it alternates sections in the book. So I'm hoping, it looks like in It Chapter 2 we're getting that with, they have Bill Hader and James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain in there, and they're alternating views because it still has some stuff with the kids in it. So I'm curious to see how they're going to do that. I'm excited about it. It Chapter 1 was a great movie. I'm looking forward to It Chapter 2, continuing that legacy of excellent storytelling. And I'm just curious if they're going to do the what do you call it? The ceremony of blood or whatever, where you know what I'm talking about. But
yeah, I thought originally when you asked me that question a few weeks ago, thought you were talking about there's another scene in the book that I don't think even in an R-rated film that they're going to go ahead and really depict. So I think the blood ceremony, I think they've already actually alluded to that or gotten around that as far as talking about there's more blood in a certain scene that's ever been used in Hollywood cinema. So I have a feeling they're going to probably go ahead and do that scene.
Okay, yeah, because that was like the shocking ending of the other ones. I'm excited to see more of it. I love the book. I love the first one. I love the story. I love Stephen King stuff. And now that I've read all the Dark Tower books and I know that this stuff's all connected, it's even more fascinating to me.
Two things, my friend, before I go ahead with more questions for you. One thing is, number one, if you're actually right now listening to the show and you're having a drinking game for every time we said the word it, you'd probably be plastered right about now. And second, for Jessica Chastain and who else am I thinking? And James McAvoy. It's so funny that they'll make more this weekend. It's so funny that this movie will make more this weekend than most likely that'll make more this weekend than Dark Phoenix will make in its entire run. Too bad they're no longer. Well, it's right now. You could just say that they're X-Men, if so to speak. So, oh. But anyways, It Chapter 2 is coming out this weekend. It's expected to do right around $100 million. What concerns me, though, or what gets me, though, is I'm reading the reviews, and even though It Chapter 1 is universally beloved by both fans and critics, a lot of people say that this was maybe a little bit long in the tooth as far as the amount of time that it takes to tell its narrative, and then also as well that the ending may have not been as complete as they wanted it to be, which is kind of interesting because the source material's already there. They just had to go ahead and connect the dots and go ahead and match up to it.
Yeah, and there has to be a level of crafting done here, though, because like I said, the first film was all about the kids, so they have to take pieces, the first two sections of the book and mix them in with sections of the last half of the book, and I'm curious to see how that all flows together.
I am as well. I'll tell you what, I'm just very interested to see where this will go as far as for It Chapter 2. Obviously, it's not going to lead to, well, you can't have it lead anywhere else. It can't be like an It Chapter 3 and continuing because Stephen King never wrote or anything beyond what the whole encompassing it book right there. So I don't know if even if it does a whale's worth of money, it does a whole lot of money as far as even comparatively speaking to the previous movie, which did over $700 million worldwide. I don't know, man. I know the studios will want to go ahead and try and do something to try and lengthen this even more. Where could they possibly go with this type of story, or where could they possibly go with this maybe connected narrative? Because you've talked about the Dark Tower before, connecting all these various Stephen King properties together in either a loose or a tight fashion. Where realistically, if you're Warner Brothers and New Line, and you want to go ahead and try and tie something to It Chapter 1 and 2, if It Chapter 2 is a success, where would you go from here in order to go ahead and try and tie into the success of these two movies?
Obviously the Dark Tower would be where I'd go, but Amazon's already working on something like that. So I wonder, like, maybe they could be interconnected. But another good place to go is Stephen King's property, The Stand. That was I think that was the one about the vampires, right? If I remember correctly.
The Stand?
Yeah,
I believe so.
Yeah, so that one has. I mean, they even revisit that series in the Dark Tower novels, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, because they all came from the same place. They came out of the darkness that stands in between Midworld and the Dark Tower, and that's where Pennywise came from, also. So maybe a show or a movies based on things that also came out of that pit. There's plenty. Stephen King has written so many novels, and I commend the man for actually writing novels instead of being a James Patterson and having other people write novels and then put your name on it.
Sorry, I'm just reading up on The Stand too. I thought it was going ahead as far as vampires concerned. I'm going to cut this part out. Let's see.
Is it? Oh, it might be Salem's Lot that I'm thinking of.
I think you're thinking of Salem's Lot because this is based because The Stand I remember is almost like a epidemic type
Yeah,
of
yeah.
deal.
So it's I retract that. It's Salem's Lot that I'm thinking about, but
Okay.
they revisit that in the Dark Tower, which is cool. It's like I said, there's an abundance of content there. The creatures that crawled out of the darkness between Midworld and Dark Tower. There's an abundance of content to pull from there, and a lot of Stephen King books. But it's just the fact that I think they could easily like have Stephen King himself even write a script based on one of his monsters, or maybe a monster he's wanted to explore but hasn't had the time to do it. Like he could easily, he doesn't have to sit there and write another 600-page novel, so however long it is, but he could craft something from scratch and make it just for the movie theaters.
I think Salem's Lot would be an interesting choice, but getting back to The Stand, because The Stand, I believe, has a lot of properties in it, and I'm reading up on it as far as my familiarity with The Stand and remembering it. I think that The Stand also dealing with an epidemic and how it's being handled and how it was handled and everything that was going on with that. I think that movie, especially coming off the heels of the zombie series that people seem to love, people seem to enjoy for the most part, I think that might actually go even better for maybe it's something like a tie-in movie to the It series, or like you said, Salem's Lot. If you want to go back into vampires and deal, Salem's Lot. If you want to go back into a supernatural realm as well. So I think either The Stand or Salem's Lot are great places to go for a continuance of this type of Stephen King love fest. But it's the way you handle it as well, because Warner Brothers handled the It series and the promotion and the hype concerning both It Chapter 1 and now Chapter 2 very well. I think even if Chapter 2 does not do the projected $100 million domestically this weekend, it will still do very well, above what most horror movies will ever do in its lifetime. So I think that needs to be said right there. I still think that some of these Hollywood studios do not understand how to promote Stephen King properties well, because we've seen issues with even some of the better Stephen King movies and some of the best Stephen King movies, like The Shawshank Redemption. That was a bomb when it came out to the theaters back in the 90s, and it really didn't gain a life until it hit television on its own. So I will tell you what, my friend, it comes to the point where Warner Brothers or whatever studio wants to go ahead and tie into this. We saw what Sony did as far as promotion with Dark Tower, and they really flubbed it as far as the actual generation and making of the movie, and also how they promoted it as being something that was just not quite up to snuff. So you saw what happens with the Stephen King property if it's not promoted properly. So I'm hoping that you can take this momentum that's built up by both It Chapter 1, and I'm going to presume that It Chapter 2 will do well enough to warrant more investigation or warrant more interest into expanding the Stephen King multiverse even more than what's been done. But again, it's all up to the studios and how they promote it and how they go ahead and go about it. They need to go ahead and get the blueprint for how It Chapter 1 was promoted and go from there, because Pet Sematary, that came out to absolutely horrible acclaim, and it did poorly at the box office. So you see what happens when you have a Stephen King property that doesn't get the kind of love that it should. But a Stephen King movie that is getting the kind of love that it should, and that is It, because with Chapter 2, we're seeing the whole encompassing story come to life, seeing how it's going to break down as far as the finality is concerned. Yes, the critical reviews are not quite up to snuff for from what the first one did, because the first one was more tight, more concise. It didn't have to do as much as It Chapter 2. It Chapter 2 flashbacks to what happened with the kids, also as well trying to story build as far as what's going on in modern times. Then you have the climactic conclusion of the battle with Pennywise. So at this point in time, I still see good signs for It Chapter 2. Whether or not it will have enough legs to deliver as much or more as It Chapter 1, that remains to be seen. I guess we'll tell. We'll know certainly over the next few weeks. But for more than most horror movies, It Chapter 2 is going to do very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, you look at the audience that went to see It Chapter 1, like, it wasn't your typical like teenagers out for a scare. It was sophisticated moviegoers, more or less, and I'd never seen that kind of audience in a movie like that. So I definitely think that they are going to be going places that are not just meant to make people scared, but also meant to make people think, which is why I think the first one succeeded so much.
I agree with you, and I know a lot of people are excited because It Chapter 2 is debuting in theaters this weekend. I think it's going to get a lot of early interest. How long it will continue that interest, it's really up to it's really up to the word of mouth of people out there that if they have enough interest in continuing and completing the It saga. What are your thoughts out there on It Chapter 2? Are you excited to see it? Did you enjoy the first one? And are you going to go back to the theaters to check out the conclusion of this two-part It series, two-part It movie series? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, plus also as well Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. My friend, it's a great weekend for video gamers. I'll tell you what, Gears of War 5 is hitting the shelves, NBA 2K20 is hitting the shelves, Borderlands 3 is coming right behind it. I know we're going to be talking about that coming up next week, so we'll hold off on the Borderlands. But right now, it is Gears of War 5. It is coming. By the time you hear this, it'll be out on store shelves. My friend, I want to ask you this. As someone who has played Gears of War probably even more than even though I've played it quite a bit myself, what are your thoughts about Gears of War 5 now that you finally have a chance to go ahead and play it and continue the saga between the cogs and just continue the fight and the battle for Sarah?
Sorry, I haven't gotten a chance to play it. It doesn't come out until Friday.
I said, now what are your thoughts on what do you expect on C as far as Gears of War?
Oh, got that. Okay. No, it looks like it has. So I was talking to Brian Wegner about this earlier. It looks like it has a lot of new elements. Every Gears has that annoying vehicle sequence. Remember, like the first one had the light and you flash the pitch black things, and then you had the mech suits in Gears 4. This one has like the sails or the solar sails or whatever they are.
Well, to expound on that, because I noted that as far as an issue that I had, that I didn't think that was going to be a good part of the game. And you're right, it seems like it's filler. It also, when you're using that vehicle, it also helps you find extra components, extra locations that you don't necessarily have to go through within the main campaign. But if you go to these extra locations, once you clear out of whatever monster horde that is based there, you get to go ahead and expound with story pieces and I guess narrative arcs that maybe you wouldn't get if you just went through the main story. So I guess it gives you the opportunity to go to these other places that are not necessary, but help build the story even more, which is great. But still, you're right. It's something that they have to throw in seemingly each and every time.
Well, they kind of did that with, Uncharted Lost Legacy, right? Like you get in the Jeep in that area and you drive around, try to find certain things, like a little mini game. But I am, I'm interested. I'm fascinated by what this is, because this is, I'm sorry, hold on one second. This is territory that Gears has never gone before. Gears has always been, hey, you take this path or you take that path. If you don't take that path, your buddy's going to take that path. He'll shoot at things from your side. You shoot at things from your side. But this one is like, you have this area of openness. I'm curious, like, how much of this is going to be. But my main focus is the narrative going to be satisfying? Because I always thought that Kate was an interesting character, but I don't want to not find out what JD and Marcus are up to, if that makes sense. I want to know like what the other members of your team from the fourth gears. I want to know what they're up to. What are they doing? How come? Are you going to be able to play with them if you do? If there's 4-player co-op, are you going to be able to play as them? I want the Gear story is so stagnant, I guess, if that makes sense. That they need to give you something to hook you back into it.
You're right, my friend. It does need something at this point in time to hook you back into the series. It is looking like, you're right, JD and Marcus Phoenix are taking a little bit of a backseat. There is a new individual that they're putting to the. There's a young lady. Excuse me. They are putting a new young lady out there. That's actually, she's from the old series, so they are putting someone else at the forefront of the series. And I'll tell you what, it's a little concerning that they're going to go ahead and do that because it is so Phoenix centric. But they are taking a chance, and you know what? I applaud them for that. Applaud them for putting someone else at the forefront as the protagonist in this particular game. So we'll see how far it goes, where they're going to take it, how much she is going to be reliant on it, as far how much she's going to be relied upon to carry the narrative out entirely. I know, of course, when you're playing a co-op, and then also within your game as a single person narrative, you're still going to be able to get some type of team building, some type of world building, some type of camaraderie or conversation that helps build the whole story as a whole. The story as a whole, just besides the protagonist Kate. I mean, obviously she's going to be the focus of it, but there still is going to be 4 individuals that are out there, that are 3 individuals out there that are going to be able to assist her, that you also want to know more about. And again, Marcus and JD Phoenix, they will be at least part of the equation when it comes to the narrative of Gears of War 5. But, at this point in time, they're taking a little bit of a different turn, the Coalition and Microsoft, when they made Gears of War 5. So I'm interested to see where this path takes them in the pursuit of trying to go ahead and figure out what's going on with the Locust. What connection does she have with the Locust? Because that's an interesting thing. She's not part of. She's not a tried and true. I grew up a cog. I'm a cog for life. That type of deal. She's a little bit. She is off. She is not necessarily a cog. She's fighting with them in this particular situation, but she's also connected with the Locust in some sort of fashion. And I know Gears of War 5 is trying to throw that in as a narrative on how she is connected to it. So you're going to find that out, how she is connected to the Locust. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with her character as Kate goes ahead and becomes the protagonist at the forefront of Gears of War 5.
I just hope that they don't diminish, Marcus and JD Phoenix, because why would they give us that introduction to those characters in Gears 4 if they weren't going to go back to them? So I want to see the stuff with Kate, but I also want to see them have a role of importance.
Well, also the fact that they're both getting a supporting role this time around, both JD and also Marcus are getting, like you said, a diminished role. Hopefully it won't continue to be diminished, because they're both great characters, especially Marcus. I mean, we've all grown up with Marcus since the game came out originally in 2006. So I'm hoping that they will go ahead and, at least in Gears of War 6 or beyond, I don't even know how many more installments there will be of Gears of War. So that's another good thing we want to ask, if that's the case. If Gears of War 5 does not perform up to expectations, they could very well end up closing off the series and maybe 1 or 2 more installments. And by then, hopefully people will have regained an interest in, hopefully they'll come to their sense. Hopefully they will be able to go ahead and have Marcus or JD maybe be a bigger part of it, if that's the case, and it doesn't do well. I want it to do well. I want Gears of War 5 to do, even better numbers than the series did before, because Microsoft doesn't have many options when it goes to foundational pieces. I know you and I have discussed this before, but they've always had an issue having foundational pieces for their hardware, and Gears of War is one of those pieces. They didn't really promote it well enough, in my opinion. It just really kind of snuck up on us. I think Borderlands has done a better job of games being promoted around that are coming around this time. I think they've done a much better job of promoting their product than Microsoft has with Gears of War 5. And NBA 2K, that's also coming out this weekend. I mean, people that like both those games like I do, they only have so much money. They're usually only going to buy one or the other. So I'm kind of concerned Gears of War is kind of like in a little bit of state of flux with where they're going because of the change in direction and narrative, but also as well the time and placement of how they promoted it and when they released the game as well.
Well, also, it's on Games Pass, right? So, like, if you're paying the $10 a month for Games Pass, you get Games Pass, you get Gears for free. So, I don't know how much units it's going to sell. I know it's going to get played a lot, but if you're someone who has Games Pass, or even like if you have Xbox Live, like you might as well just pay the extra couple bucks and get the Games Pass Ultimate. But even if you have all that stuff, like it doesn't hurt to check the game out. And I think that might be what they're banking on more than selling physical copies of the game. But again, like is Gears of War 5 going to be Crackdown 3? That's the question everyone's asking.
I hope not, because Crackdown 3 was a true disappointment after so much hype initially at E3 saying it was going to be a fully destructible environment. It's going to be just an awesome time. It's going to be so much more advanced than anything we've ever seen before. And it came out to a whisper. After delay after delay after delay, they realized they couldn't get it done. And it came out to basically a whisper and just vanished off the face of the earth rather quickly. I mean, a lot of people left that multiplayer. In fact, it didn't even really make the charts because it sold so poorly. So I'm hoping that will not be the same fate for Gears of War, because the Crackdown series is basically damaged goods for quite some time. You will not be seeing a new edition of the Crackdown series for many, many years, maybe 10 years probably, before you'll ever see a revision of that series. But with Gears of War, that is for a long time, and you got to admit this as well, and I'm sure you'll admit this as well. They always, they at Microsoft have thought of Gears of War as being the number 2 franchise behind Halo. I mean, it's been Halo, Gears of War, and Forza for so many years. If Gears of War 5 doesn't do well, they could be pushing Forza up and pushing Gears to the backside.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they're going to let them finish the story. At least I hope they would. I don't know how Gears 5 is going to end, but I feel like Forza already sells more copies than Gears, because when we talk about Xbox, now everyone talks about Halo or Forza, and you don't really hear people talking about Gears that much anymore. I know a lot of people were excited about it at E3, but that was just because, we haven't had a new Gears of War in 3 years. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. This is kind of its chance, it's at a turning point. It's either going to skyrocket to fame and fortune and, sell a bunch of copies and people are going to talk about it. It's going to be critically applauded, or it's going to go the way of Crackdown. It can't stay in the middle right where it is, because it's just going to become stagnant. It's already stagnant. People have already stopped talking about it.
Absolutely. And Gears of War 5 on Metacritic right now, it's getting decent grades, getting a decent review here and there, but it's not getting those 9s and aboves that hopefully I know a lot of people were hoping for. It's getting pretty good reviews. The advancements don't seem to be large enough as far as from either a campaign or a multiplayer, or even or even for the horde mode that seems to be so advanced or so revolutionary that it's going to go ahead and put the Gears series into a higher stratosphere with gamers. Unfortunately, it's showing that this is going to be maybe a series that is aging, but is not aging all that well. What are your thoughts out there on Gears of War 5? Are you ready to play it this weekend? Are you geared up for it? pardon the pun. Are you geared up for it, or are you just going to go ahead and miss it, or do you, because you don't have a love for the Gears of War series anymore? What are your thoughts out there? Please share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, coming up next, I'll tell you what, it's fantasy football time again, and a lot of great things are going on when it concerns the upcoming NFL season. It just started on Thursday. A lot of people are excited for the new year. Fantasy football is getting hot and heavy. And Justin Novro is coming up right after the break in a taste for you Pop Culture Cosmos listeners out there of our new series called Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's available right now on Anchor. You want to go ahead and give it a listen to, but you know what? We're going to go ahead and give you a sneak peek of what's going on with our new show, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, right after the break. This is the PCC Multiverse. And we're back to close out the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. If you need a listing of where we're at, because we're being played all around the world 7 days a week, we're on radio stations worldwide. Check out our listings today at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, including our great friends including our great friends at Pulse Talk Radio. You want to give them a shot at pulsetalkradio.com. Want to listen to all the great programming they have there, including the PCC Multiverse. Also, as well, if you need a listing of where we're at with all the podcast apps that are out there and the podcast listings, we're on virtually all of them. So you want to check out a listing of where we're at today for podcasting at Pop Culture Cosmos. My friend, you've got a great thing going on with Congratulations, You Suck. Don't tell me you suck, man. Don't tell me it. Go ahead, my friend. Let me know where I can get a copy or get my hands on your awesome book, Congratulations, You Suck.
BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com, BookLocker, and other great booksellers. So check it out today, and please leave a review on Amazon.com. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. It is Congratulations, You Suck. If you stop by a Barnes & Noble store, you can request it to come to that store. It's Congratulations, You Suck from my good friend, Josh Peterson. Before we head on out, my friend, two last things. We're going to go ahead right now and count down the numbers 141 to 150 on our top 200 video games of all time that were determined by our listeners and followers of the Pop Culture Cosmos. We cannot thank them enough for taking the time to go ahead and vote on these games. So without further ado, what is number 150? Well, it's Kirby Superstar at number 150. Horizon Zero Dawn, a game I know that you liked very much, at 149. Grand Theft Auto Vice City at 148, one of the most underrated of the Grand Theft Auto series, in my opinion. God of War, the older God of War, the original God of War from Sony, that's at 147. 146 is Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex. Number 145 is a game that I know is still being played by a lot of people today as I guess what you could say is a true trendsetter in the multiplayer platform, and that is Counter-Strike Global Offensive. For these options, my friend, are there any that really stick out to you when it concerns games 150 to 145?
Okay, so never played Kirby Superstar. Horizon Zero Dawn, I own it, and I keep wanting to play it. I just haven't had time. I heard it's like a 60 to 80 hour game, so I just don't know when I'm going to be able to invest in that. I do want to play it, though. I own it, own all the expansions. One day I will get to it. As far as games that I've actually played, I played God of War. I just got done playing that. You can check it out on my Humanity Media YouTube channel, my full playthrough of God of War 1.
That's the God of War 1, the original.
Mm-hmm. Played it all. It's there. It's a tough game, man. Like, they don't tell you that it's more than just like solving puzzles and swinging your swords around. It's a lot of timing. Like, it's a lot of stuff that kids these days would not be able to play because they don't have the patience for it. You got to time, like, there's this part when you're in Hades and you're trying to climb back up into the world, and there's you have to get on these things that have teeth spinning around. So you got to time it. You got to jump, try not to get hit by the teeth. That I died 62 times. 62 times
And you counted too.
And I counted because I had a feeling that was going to happen. I was doing little tallies on a piece of paper. That sucked. And I know that if I lost patience for that, there's no way these kids who are sitting there playing Fortnite these days would even stand a chance playing something like this, because it's not instant gratification. They can't sit there. Gone are the days, when you have people who are willing to play hard games, Dark Souls, Sekiro. Like, when I hear people younger than me playing those games, like, I applaud them. I want to shake their hand. As the other one, Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex. Played it as a Crash Bandicoot game. Not really a lot to report on there. It was a follow-up to Crash 3, but it was nowhere near as good as Crash 1 or 2.
Counter-Strike Global Offensive? CSGO?
No, I played Counter-Strike, but I never played CSGO.
Okay. Well, as a game that's still being played today, as far as from an esports format, CSGO is still something that a lot of people love because of the fact it's so fast moving. It's so quick as far as the reflexes that you need in order to play that. I think you got to go ahead and give CSGO its props for being a game that Valve made many years ago. Here's a story once again, my friend, that Valve made. You've heard this song and dance before. Valve made many years ago that is still loved today and is still utilized today by many a gamer out there. Well, that's again 145 to 150 on our list of the top 200. Let's shoot down to 144, which is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Still has some good stuff in there. A lot of people remember the airport scene. I think a lot of people talked about that. That was very controversial at the time. 143 is an excellent game I truly enjoyed. I truly enjoy Bayonetta 2. Bayonetta 2 is at 143. Bagman from the arcades, that's at 142. That's something that a lot of people, use as I don't say itself as a popular game, because it really wasn't that popular of a game when it came out, but it influenced so many other games with its style of play that it definitely deserves a place on our top 200 list. And 141 is Toe Jam and Earl. Toe Jam and Earl is at 141. So, my friend, you heard the list of the last games on this list. I want to hear your thoughts, man. What are your thoughts? I want to hear your thoughts on games 141 to 144.
All right, so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with many of these games. Just Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and I remember that being so difficult that I actually gave up playing it. So, I do want to play Bayonetta 2, loved the first one, but the others I don't really have any experience with. Always heard good things about Toe Jam and Earl. Want to go back and play it one day. I heard there's some kind of remake in the works, so maybe I'll check it out then. But unfortunately, my area of expertise is not in any of these games here listed.
Well, again, I will tell you this, that I enjoyed the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare immensely. There were so many scenes in that game that I truly cannot forget, and the multiplayer was something that was revolutionary for its time. Modern Warfare 2 expounded on that, but it was that no Russian scene, that scene that's entitled No Russian, that provided a lot of controversy, especially if it was made today. That scene, I don't think, would probably get out. I think the ratings board would have plenty of issues with it, because it does provide a lot of controversy even up to this day when it gets replayed on YouTube or whoever tries to stream it. But Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 as a game is still pretty solid. I enjoyed my time with it. Again, it is at 144. A lot of other great games in there. Toe Jam and Earl, which I know was a favorite for the Genesis series. I know a lot of players like that were really in tune with the Genesis. And then, of course, like I said before, Bayonetta 2, a fast-moving, fun game, and expounded on the original, very highly rated, but like its predecessor, I know, it's so weird. Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 were very much beloved by the critics, but it never translated into a box office success, just a top-selling success for either game, either on the Wii U or the Nintendo Switch. So, you know what? I think people are missing out. Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 are really good games, and they should go ahead and look into it. In fact, I think that Bayonetta 2, if you get that, I think it still comes with Bayonetta 1 in. So you get two games for the price of one. So you get two games for the price of one, which I really think is a good deal. So those are our 141 to 150, 141 to 150 titles in our top 200 list. If you want to see the list in its entirety, we are counting down each and every day off our site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. The site's a little bit farther than we are at this point in time on our shows. So if you want to go ahead and take a look even further down the list, check it out today at popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. We talked a lot of great things, talked a lot of awesome things on today's show. But before we head on out, I got to talk to you about a controversy that came up this week with another game that's coming out. And I mentioned before Gears of War 5, and I briefly mentioned it as well on this episode, and that's NBA 2K20, which usually is a very high-rated game, great gameplay, a lot of interesting features, a lot of interesting things to do. They always have they always have a decent career mode, a lot of things great going on there. But it's funny, with all the controversy that games with microtransactions create, and the fact that 2K has been very upfront as far as their microtransactions and saying, hey, NBA, WWE, and any other time we go ahead and put out DLC or microtransactions, it makes us a ton of money, so we're going to keep on doing it. To be as bold as to release a video, I believe, to the European market in regards to a type of format for almost like microtransactions, but in a form of gambling like slot machines or video poker. In this case, it looks very much like a slot machine. That to me is concerning. As a parent, I don't like it. I don't think it's necessary, especially for something like a basketball game, which you're not really going there to go play video poker or even try a slot machine.
Well, think about it. It's a bridge too far. And it's not. You got to sit there and wonder, the devs on this game, what in the world were they thinking? Did they think that this would be
I think
funny?
they're just trying to be bold. They're just trying to go ahead and be brash and be bold and be,
brash and bold, and then there's idiotic, because you're caught in the midst. 2K and EA are the leaders in this whole online gambling loot box conspiracy. So to go to the point where you make a slot machine and it actually looks like something that would be in a casino, how do you think people are going to react to that? What did they think was going to happen? It's so dumb to me that they would that the people who market the game would sit there and be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. It just in the midst of all this stuff going on, everything, that they would sit there and think to themselves that people aren't going to get upset about this, because they are, and I totally get it. It was a very stupid thing for them to do, and bold or not, it was not a good decision. It's another reason for people to be weary of video games, and especially after all the gun stuff going on, people blaming video games for that. It's just, this is not a good time for games to have bad publicity, and stuff like this only adds to it.
I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, the way it's presented, like a like a slot machine, where you go ahead and you get the rung up as far as to get the certain players, to get the certain type of perks and certain type of things out of it. To me, it's quite disappointing. I mean, if you got to go ahead and go off of an XP system, if you got to go ahead and go off a progression system where you have to earn XP points, and you can buy XP points to go ahead and get other things that are within as far as microtransactions in there, I get that. I know that's a side deal that 2K now loves immensely, and they have been very, very upfront and saying, you know what, we're going to keep doing this for our games. We're, for every Grand Theft Auto, for every NBA 2K, for every WWE 2K, we're going to make sure we maximize each and every one. And I guess as an organization, as a developer, as a publisher, you have to go ahead and maximize every game that comes out there. I mean, we as gamers, we would love the fact that, okay, if I'm buying $60, I want to get the whole experience right there. Unfortunately, those days are pretty much over. You're going to have to go ahead, if you want the full experience, pay a lot more. But I think this is a little bit over the top. I think this is very wrong to do. I think the way it's presented, especially like you said, in the times where so many legislators are out there to try and get the video game industry at each and every turn. I mean, earlier this year, they're trying to pass laws in certain areas in certain countries against certain video games that they think promote gambling and microtransactions. I mean, the Star Wars Battlefront 2, I mean, do I need to say more as far as the bad look it did for Electronic Arts and how much of a misstep that was? This is not a good look at all for the video game industry. I'm very appalled and very concerned that they were going to go ahead. They would go ahead knowing the landscape of the video game industry themselves, because they make games each and every year, especially in the NBA 2K series, that they would be brash enough to go ahead and put this out there that actually looks like a slot machine. And it just really is disappointing what it teaches the kids, what it teaches, young adults, what it teaches anyone under the age of 21 that's not yet gambling. Hey, go ahead, try this out. If you like it, go ahead, do more. Go ahead, do more. That could just lead to many more issues down the line. I know it's probably a long shot for 99% of the people out there, but for maybe that one or two individuals out there that want to get hooked on these microtransactions and the slot machine type deal, I mean, that just is not good. That's just not a good look at all.
Yeah, and it's also bad publicity too, because video games is probably the most trolled industry of all time. Like, you go on YouTube and every other comment on a video game thing is someone trolling it for one reason or another. But this is dumb. It's just, there was no thought put into this, and especially like if you're a very popular basketball franchise, and this feels like a great way to lose fans.
Well, if not for the actual league itself, it does not set a good image. I'm surprised the NBA went ahead with it. I know they're trying to embrace gambling as far as from adult aspect, and I get that. And I don't, being here in Las Vegas, I can't be a hypocrite and say I don't like that, because a lot of our money in our town is based off of gambling. I get that, but trying to go ahead and get a video game to market it to young adults, to kids who are the majority of the individuals that will most likely be playing NBA 2K20, because it does, I think it has an E rating or very low rating at that. Maybe I think like an E10 or something like that. It's really kind of depressing as far as what they're trying to go ahead and do as a developer. I hope for change. I hope somebody will go ahead and get a green light and say, you know what? Maybe this is a little bit too far. Maybe we need to go ahead and reevaluate the NBA 2K series and how we go ahead and promote our microtransactions. I'm hoping for that change, and I'm hoping it very soon. And I'm hoping for it very soon. What are your thoughts out there on the controversy that NBA 2K20 has created with its presentation of some of its microtransactions, including the presentation style of a slot machine, as far as trying to go ahead and get more bonus perks from your NBA 2K20 experience? Do you think it's gone too far? And do you think it sends the wrong message to young adults out there, and young adults and kids alike out there, especially when they go ahead and play their next game of NBA 2K20? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, thank you so much for being a part of today's episode. I also want to give a big thank you to Justin Novaro for joining us on what's now our second episode of the Inside Sports Fantasy Football. Again, if you want to check out Inside Sports Fantasy Football, it's available today on anchor.fm and so many other podcast outlets. Been a great episode, my friend. Any last thoughts on the way out?
No, I mean, I'm going to play some Gears this weekend. Maybe we can talk about that, but I think we covered everything.
I think we covered a lot as well. I know you and I will be tracking the performance of It Chapter 2. Also as well, we're going to have Jason Todd Feinberg, our good friend, who's going to, as always, each and every year, he's going to break down the horror movies for the rest of the year. In fact, also share his thoughts on It Chapter 2. He couldn't be on today's program, because he got to go to an early screening of It Chapter 2, that lucky guy. So he's going to be here on the Monday program sharing his thoughts for the rest of the year on horror films, for the rest of the year on the horror film genre. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.